This week in wrestling history, a couple of interesting things have come up in this week wrestling history, Andy, that I want to get your take on. November the 3rd, 2014. It was 10 years ago today on Monday Night Raw that the first vignette of the New Day aired, as you see here. Xavier Woods. And then in the weeks to follow, there would be vignettes for Kofi and Big E, and that would lead to their debut, I think, later in the month. But you were watching regularly during this time. I was not. Give us the rundown. Give us the context of your first impression of all this.
Oh man. First of all, I cannot believe it's been 10 years since this has happened.
Yes.
Second of all, like I think the original plan was for them to be like preachers.
Yes.
And then it kind of molded into something else. I honestly remember like them debuting and everybody hating it. Like absolutely hating it.
Well, they were supposed to be heels, right? If I'm not
Right,
mistaken.
but it wasn't like
I know,
like
I get what
boo
you
your
mean.
heel. He is like, this is stupid. What
Right.
are we doing? But then looking back at it 10 years later, like one of the greatest groups of all time.
Sure.
Like one of the some of the like probably the greatest tag team of all time, one of the greatest tag teams of all time, with their lengthy reign that they had during a time period where not only was WWE TV bad, but like tag team wrestling meant absolutely nothing.
Yep.
And then you put the New Day and the Usos in like a 200 match feud, and everybody's like, "Yep, nope, this works." Like these guys are killing each other every week, and it's working perfectly. I just looking back at it now, you get, you know, the lead up to Kofi Mania. Now then you look at Big E a couple years later winning Money in the Bank and winning the world title. Like these guys changed the wrestling world. They changed tag team wrestling in WWE as well. And so it just, looking from where they started to how everybody reacted to where we are now and everything that's going on, it's crazy to look at how drastically different they are how drastically different they are from the beginning to now.
Yeah, and I'm sure that we're going to talk about that in the coming weeks as this story develops. I mean, on Monday Night Raw, we saw them lose to the War Raiders tonight. They lost in the triple threat match last week. So this story continues to develop, and we'll talk about this more as the weeks go on. All right, we move from November the 3rd to November the 4th. That is today as we're recording this live. Let's go back to 1996. And that is 28
years ago. Yeah, I wasn't born yet. I was born a month later.
Wow. Okay. 28 years ago on Monday Night Raw. It was a big Monday Night Raw, Andy. And the reason is because the pictures you're seeing on our screen here is a young upstart Rocky Maivia, aka The Rock. But the pictures you're seeing on your screen are from Survivor Series, his in-ring debut. But Monday Night Raw, several weeks earlier, was actually the first appearance of Rocky Maivia as he came out, as he joined Mark Marrow, the Stalker, and I don't remember. Oh, Jake Roberts. He wasn't there at the time. But couple of the guys that were on that Survivor Series team, that was his first appearance. They were all out there taking on the other guys that they were going to face at Survivor Series. So really, really interesting, man, to look back 28 years ago today. We see the first appearance of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
He's a completely different person,
isn't he?
Like a wildly completely different person. Like I, even looking back at like his debut and like even that run that he had, and then you get to like Nation of Domination, like the difference between that is so drastic.
Yes.
I never would have thought, like, you know, if even though I wasn't born yet, if I was watching wrestling during this time, that's not a dig at you being old or anything. But like, there's no way anybody could predict that Rocky Maivia would turn into probably the most popular human being on the planet.
Yep.
Like,
You're
that's
right.
not, like, take wrestling out of the picture. Like, the most popular person in the entire world is The Rock. And that's not the same person. Like, you can't convince me that is the same person. It's crazy to look at the transformation that he went through.
I'm not getting into politics at all, but tomorrow is election day. And if you would have told me 28 years ago, this man that you see on your screen could easily win the presidency if he was running tomorrow,
That makes no
like,
sense.
come on.
I also wouldn't believe you if you told me that, Kane, when he debuted, would also become the mayor of Knox County. But
that's no, you're digging me being old and watching. 28 years ago, I was watching this episode of Monday Night Raw live. I remember watching it live, not for The Rock's debut, but for what else happened that night. The end of the show, Brian Pillman has a gun. It all happened on the same Monday Night Raw. Now, of course, I'm not showing you the gun picture, but this is a shot from inside Brian Pillman's home. You see Kevin Kelly there. You see Brian's ex-wife, or she was his wife at the time that he died, Melanie, which we all saw her on The Dark Side of the Ring. Really stole the show for not so good reasons. But anyway, this is a shot of Brian Pillman where Steve Austin had threatened to invade his home. You see Brian's cast there. He had just had that terrible accident where he had to have his ankle reconstructed. And so he's got his foot propped up there, and Steve Austin is threatening to come beat him up in his house. And Austin shows up, and Pillman just has a gun, had a gun, and threatens to shoot him. And USA has to issue an apology and blah, 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 blah. I remember this not for the gun incident, surprisingly. I remember this best for, and maybe this is just a weird wrestling fan in me. We got a glimpse inside of a real wrestler's home on live television. Like, I remember that being my takeaway. It's like, wait a minute. Yeah. This is a wrestler lives in Kentucky, because he lived on the Kentucky side of Cincinnati. He lived in that suburb, but it was technically in Kentucky. I was like, wait, this wrestler lives in Kentucky and we see his home live? What are we doing here?
Listen, it's one of the most ambitious yet dumbest wrestling ideas ever. It's this storyline. Not because they did it, but because they did it and didn't tell anybody they were going to do it.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing that it gets me every time, is like, Vince was like, yeah, we'll do it. That's fine. Like, whatever happens, just do it. Like, that makes no sense to me at all. But it is one of the most iconic moments now in Raw history. Is Pillman's got a gun, and you go off the air not knowing if he shot Austin or not, which is crazy to say that in context of wrestling.
Brian Pillman was insane, dude. Like, he was a loose cannon for a reason. You imagine what his character would be right now, especially if he was running on the indies, like what it would be.
It would be fantastic. Like, I don't know. I don't even have anybody to compare him to nowadays of what it would be like.
I don't know if you know this story or not, but I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell all of our viewers and our listeners this, because it's not super public knowledge, I don't think. Brian Pillman was so crazy during this time. Of course, it's a very well-known fact that he lied to Eric Bischoff about his contract, and he pitted WCW and WWE against each other so he get more money, and tried to work in both companies as well as ECW and all the things. What he also did during that time was he had a really close, everybody knows that he used to play for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he was really, really good. He was just very undersized because I think he played linebacker. But anyway, so he used to play for the Bengals. So he had a hookup in the NFL. Brian Pillman that year, and I don't remember if it was 96 or 97, probably in 96, because he would have had his ankle blown up in 97, so he couldn't have done this. Around this time, Brian had a hookup that he could go to the Super Bowl. And Brian wanted to get a field pass and handcuff himself to the goalpost and not tell anybody he was going to do it. That's how real he wanted this loose cannon character to be.
I like it.
It's insane.
That's crazy.
It's insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that almost happened. That almost happened.
That's a good representation of Kentucky, though.
It is what it is, right? We
Redneck
can
with a
say
gun. Makes
we
sense.
we can say that because we're both wearing
Oh,
Kentucky.
absolutely.
Um, one last this day in history, and then we're going to get out of here. It happened 9 years ago today, November the 4th, 2015. Seth Rollins blows his knee up at a live event in Dublin, Ireland as the WWE champion. Of course, it ends that great run. But Andy, what it also ended, of course, it put Rollins on the shelf for 8, 9 months, whatever it was. It also ended our hopes of a Shield triple threat at WrestleMania because we were absolutely on track to get it in Dallas at WrestleMania 32.
Yep. And we would have still got the same person walking out as champ, but it'd have been a much better match. It'd have been a much better match than what we got. Yeah, that's what I think of the most when I look back at Seth's injury that was the opportunity that we had and we missed it. And his reign as champion was a weird reign. Obviously he won at WrestleMania in my opinion the greatest cash in of all time. And
You can make
then
that argument, yes.
and and then feuded with Brock for a while until Taker got involved, and then feuded with Cena, broke Cena's nose, like beat Cena for the title, or was double champ at one point, wrestled Sting, broke Sting's neck. Like he had an up and down reign as champion, to say the least. And then he goes into this feud with Kane and just on a freak incident just snaps his ACL. I think it was his ACL, wasn't it?
Yep, it was.
Doing a sunset flip. He was going for the buckle bomb, it looked like, and it just I hated that it happened. It derailed his momentum. However, his return at Extreme Rules is so good.
Yep.
Going back and watching it, it still gives me chills to this day. Of like going back and hearing the reaction from the crowd, and then they had the idea of like, oh yeah, let's just make him a heel though, even though everybody's cheering him. Like that was stupid. But what we got after that was done really, really well. I just hated that his reign ended in the way that it did, and it robbed us of the Shield triple threat, which I'm still holding hope for one day happens, but it seems less likely every day.
Yeah, it does, man. It really does. I mean, like, look, Roman and Seth both have less career in front of them than behind them. And I don't think Mox is coming to the WWE in the next 3 years. So I'm not saying 3 years is the window. I'm just saying, like,
about 2 or 3 years ago, I'd agreed with you. But after Cody has come and Punk has shown up and Jay Gargano has shown up, I'm not ruling anything out at this point.
That's fair. That's fair.
It seems like it's very unlikely to happen, which is just, it's horrible that it's not going to happen.